This is going to be my second case study video. I got a whole lot of positive feedback on Sophia's case study last week to recap her national winning collegiate nationals performance and who she is as an athlete, what her training looks like, what her training is going to look like, and a whole bunch of other stuff. This time, I will be recapping a client of mine named Colin Murphy, who has progressed his training PR on squat in between October of last year and now. So around 7 or 8 months of squat progress by doing 2 times a week pause squats. And I will be explaining the reasoning behind the protocol to his squat training and how successful it actually has been. So I will kind of start the video out as I did last time, briefly reviewing who Colin is as an athlete and the data that we've gained off the bat, which I'll explain in detail, but wasn't much to start out. We were off to a slow start when we did start a little bit over a year ago. I've been with Colin since late March, early April of 2022. So I'll be starting out recapping that for a little bit, and then I'll just go down the list of stuff that I wanted to talk about in order. Basically starting out with what training looked like when we did start out, and in between a competition that Colin competed at in September of 2022. So a pretty decent amount of training in between, we'll say early April and September. So I'll be recapping that, and then the meat and potatoes of this video is going to be what his squat training in particular looked like after he competed at that competition in September. And like I said, when we did first start out, there wasn't a whole lot of useful data. I couldn't really, make a case study on him within the first few months that we were together, which is expected. The first few months working with a coach is a very, very large learning experience between the coach and the athlete. But now there's a whole lot more that I'm able to say, and that's pretty much the reason I'm making this case study, because I can talk about Colin's squat training in great detail. So without rambling any more at the start, I will just get right into it. So first thing I will run through is just from point A to point B, which is this squat, which was about a week out, a little over a week out from our first competition together in late September of last year. So around 7 months ago. So I'll play the video, and then the one on the right is his most recent 1 rep max, which is a paused single with 17.5 kilos more than this final single of prep in September. So yeah, I'll play the video, and you can see a quite obvious difference in strength level, a quite obvious difference in just how comfortable he is in the hole. If you look on the left, like we hit the hole and then we just kind of shift back and forth in our center of mass. It's just super shaky, and overall force output is all over the place versus a much more controlled descent speed. Managing center of mass a whole lot better. If you look at Colin's squat from the side, you can kind of, from what used to happen, if you look at his squat from the side, you can kind of see him come down to the hole, then almost shift forward and push forward, and then back, realign his center of mass at the top. But if you can't tell from the side here, but if I were to take a video from the side, it would look a whole lot better. And you can kind of see, if you trace the edge of the plates, how much more forward he falls in that hole and how much more comfortable overall the squat on the right looks. So that being said, the point A of this case study is the video on the left. The point B is his current PR, which is 17.5 kilos more, like I said. And yeah, that it's incredible, like how successful our squat training has been between those 2 times. And not only that, but Colin is actually taking this 314-pound single now for paused doubles regularly, block after block after block. We kept chipping away at this pause single ever since the meet, and I'll show the programming between then and now in a minute, but he kept chipping away at this pause single, and this is where it ended up. Now, Colin and I first started in late March, early April of 2022, so it's been slightly over a year since we've been working together. And initial microcycle design for him just looked like your standard, hey, I'm taking on a new client, let's kind of ease into things style. of designing his program. So what he was doing before working with me was self-programming. He just kind of wrote everything down on a sheet, and just kind of did his own thing in that regard. So I didn't have a whole lot of data to go off of. I just had about the most recent 4 to 8 weeks of his training. I had some training videos. I had everything on his Instagram. So I didn't have a whole lot. He didn't work with a coach before, so I couldn't gather data from his experience working with a coach. It was his first time reaching out for coaching and actually working with someone else, getting a second pair of eyes in his training. So I worked with what I had. I adjusted some stuff to his training. His squat training off the bat looked like a 4x4 paused on his secondary day, and then like a 1x4 and 4x4, and then his primary day was a top triple and then back down triples. So I kind of, it was more of a mold based on his most recent training, and then kind of factoring in his demographics a little bit. He does have a long range of motion on all 3 of its lifts. He is a little more leveraged for the subtotal. His bench, he has virtually no arch, so his range of motion is still pretty long, but his arms are not long by any means. So he's just a pure strength lifter. He's not really a technician. He has multiple years of training under his belt. He has competed what I believe was 1 or 2 times before me, so he's not a complete noob. But like I said, he hasn't worked with a coach before, and there was a lot of data gathering that I needed to do. So the video on the left is close to when we first started together. I think this is from around July or May, June, July range, basically the summer of last year. I don't have a date to the video because my collection process for clients' training videos before, like when I first started working with him at the moment, I didn't require people to date their stuff, and it wasn't on Google Drive, and it wasn't auto-dated. So this is more of an estimate, but it was around the May to July timeframe. So if you watch here, there's a few things that we can notice. And to elaborate a little more, like I said, his primary day was a triple and back down triples at the moment, and this was his week 4, which was the end of the block for him. This was his week 4 top triple with 303 pounds. So back to the left video. I'll press play, and some things we'll notice off the bat are Colin has a pretty decent stack between his rib cage and pelvis. He is a little bit risey, which is a habit that we've gotten out of a little bit, but the number one thing I wanted to adjust with his technique was just that pitch forward, and that basically we're falling a little bit too much on our forefoot immediately out of the hole, and you can really see it on this 3rd rep here. But we're over midfoot here, and then right out of the hole we pitch super far forward into our forefoot. And from my eyes and from the feedback he was giving me, it was a combination of just his capabilities within squat technique, as well as wearing heels and probably a stance that was a bit too narrow. And if you watch the video on the right, this was one of Colin's back down sets for a set of 4 with the same weight, 303 pounds. And this was the same day that he hit 352 for a pause single. And you can see here we are much more comfortable in the hole. The weight is moving significantly faster. We don't have flats on. Stance is a little bit wider. And this is after doing months on months of pause squats 2 times a week and easing into comp squatting. This set actually used to be a 1-1 or basically first rep paused set of 4. So he would do the first rep pause, and then the other 3 reps would be comp squat. And before that, it was just a straight up pause set of 4. So transferring that, the adaptation to just doing a pause primary day entirely to what is now if I can click here, what is now a competition squat single with pause warm-ups, and then a comp squat set of 4, and then a comp squat 2x4% back down. We've come a long way. So right off the bat, we, kind of focused more on data collection in terms of strength throughout the week, actually programming that he could get stronger off of. And to be quite honest with you, Colin was more of a slow responder, and in my opinion, one of the clients that took me a little bit longer and a little bit more effort to actually figure out. And because of that, there wasn't a whole lot of useful data collection between when we started and approximately July to August that we actually did, or that I actually did theoretically. But around July to August was when we started meet prep for his meet in September. Yeah, like I couldn't really point my finger on, hey, I could tell a whole story on what works for Colin and why. Like I wasn't really at that stage of his programming yet. However, right around 6 to 8 weeks out from his meet, I started getting hunches on changes in his programming that I could make after his meet, but we were just too close to a meet to actually make the changes at the moment. So I held back on that. We focused on just moving the numbers we needed to have a good meet, and prep for the meet, did the meet, and then after that, I changed his programming significantly. So to transition into the meat and potatoes of what this video is going to be, which is training after his meet and my reasoning behind actually programming what he's being programmed right now, we can start off by saying I had that hunch that I think I wanted to give him 2 times a week pause squats. And reason being primarily was to teach him proper center of mass management. I wanted to get rid of that pitch in the hole. And although we did switch from heels to flats, he still had that little bit of pitch in the hole. If you watch that 314 comparison video I showed you, you can see on the left, you can see he comes right in that hole and then pitches so far forward on the left and then tries to, his balance will naturally compensate and he rocks a little bit back and forth. And every single time we touched something, it was usually around above like 290, 300 range. It would happen and it would get worse. And maybe this was just due to lack of exposure at this high of a percent 1 rep max, but at the time, this was pretty much his 1 rep, like this was his 1 rep max in training. So yeah, like it was, you can tell it's significantly worse on the left compared to the right. So I said to myself, hey, his paused 4s on his secondary day looked the absolute best I've ever seen his squat pattern look. And like I said, he is a little more leveraged for the subtotal. He should be able to get into a comfortable squat and not have many issues with that. So, like I said, pause 4s, best I've ever seen his squat. I didn't want to change up a whole bunch of things because I knew pretty much before he even competed that I wanted to give him 2 times a week pause squats after the meet. So I didn't want to change up a whole bunch of rep ranges or just the overall days that he was squatting within the week. So if you remember what I said about his training before the meet, he had paused 4s on his secondary day, which I did make his primary day, and I'll explain that little more detail in a second. But I kept the rep range of 4s on his primary day and kept them paused because that was, like I said, the best I've ever seen his squats look in terms of center of mass management. And then I also kept the rep range of 3s, got rid of the top set. And kept the rep range of 3s on his primary day, which now is his secondary day. So doing that allowed me to kind of keep things a little more constant in terms of his rep ranges. So we can kind of focus on the variable being manipulated as the variation on squat itself. So the reason I relabeled his 2 squat days and switched the primary and secondary, and mind you, those are just labels. Like at the bottom line is, if you look at his microcycle layout up top, we're squatting Mondays and Thursdays, and that was it. That could be the end of the story. And theoretically, between when we started and the meet, either one of his days could have been his primary squat. But I couldn't really tell if he was simply stronger on a certain day or not, because it seemed like his strength levels were pretty much equal on both squat days throughout the week. And I kind of had a little bit of trouble actually telling if that was simply because earlier on in the week, his pause squats were just cleaner. He was able to manage his center of mass way better on those. He didn't have that significant shift onto his forefoot in the hole, or if he was literally just stronger on Monday. So I wanted to combine both of those ideas, so I put his primary squat on Monday because his squats consistently looked better on that day. Kept the pause fours, which he was doing before the meet, like I said, and then made his secondary day on Thursday. I didn't think it would be too significant of a change because, like I said, strength levels on both days were pretty much the same. So now that my decision to actually program him 2 times a week pause squats was written down and in the books, it's more so a matter of how I was going to teach him to manage center of mass better on higher percent run rate maxes. And what better way to do so than giving him a paused single? This was going to be basically that one set per week that told us whether or not the programming to his squat after the meet was working or not. It's a top set, and that's one of the reasons why people program top sets, to have one performance determining set throughout the week that you can say, oh, hey, this is getting better throughout the week. The programming that we're doing right now is probably working. And the reasoning for me actually giving him ascending sets was to manage average intensity throughout the week. Like I said before, he had a top set here and then back down triples. And I didn't want to get rid of the high intensity that he was usually doing on his Thursday squat day. So instead of giving him 2 top sets on pause squat a week, like I said, because he does have a pause single on his primary day now, I decided to do ramping, basically ascending sets on his secondary day. So he would take that first set here, which was kind of like a guiding set because, like I said, I had that hunch that, hey, if we run 2 times a week pause squats for the aforementioned reasons, he's probably going to get a lot stronger. So doing this set here was kind of like that feel out set. And that ended up being the case where he would do the first couple of ascending sets and be like, holy shit, like things are flying because I'm doing pause squats. I can probably load X weight on my last ascending set because that's probably the best call based on how the sets beforehand moved. And over time, I ended up manipulating this a tiny bit, which I'll explain soon. But the bottom line is the programming to his squat worked almost instantly. You can see here, the first pause single he took after his meet was with 265, which was pretty negligible for him, regardless of it being new programming or not. He was taking 265 and 275 for regular paused fours on this day, which, like I said, were the best his squat ever looked before the meet. But you can see 265 for a week 1 pause single, and then when he ended his block here, he took 315 pounds for a pause single, which was 1 pound more than that super ugly squat that he did a little over a week out in comparison to his 1 max now. So literally just 4 weeks after he competed, he's pausing his training PR, which is incredible. So due to the rapid success in the changes to his squat microcycle that we did make after he competed, I made very, very minimal changes over time. Now, you can see here, I ripped this video off of his Instagram because I couldn't find a dated video and I wanted to know the date. But this was in late September, so you can see the video above it is from the 22nd. But this paused single was an all-time PR in late December, which was, not far off from his meet in September at all. And like I mentioned, Colin historically is, according to him and according to his September performance, was someone who tapers super, super well going into a meet on squat and deadlift. So the fact that he was taking 2.5 kilos off of his super peaked and tapered meet PR in training under fatigue for a paused single was mind-blowing. So pretty much, I'll let the video play again, but pretty much, since we started the adjustments to his squat training after the meet, we just kept chipping away slowly and slowly on this pause single. And by December, we pause squatted 330 pounds for a training PR. And like I said, 2.5 kilos off of the meet PR, which was super, super peaked. So I didn't want to give him permanent 2 times a week pause squats. It was working super well, and I don't want to even use the word was because we're still pause squatting 2 times a week to this day in late April. So it's been months, but I wanted to basically give him some kind of way to easily transition from pause squats to comp squats without losing the adaptations from doing 2 times a week pause squats. So like I said, the pause single on this day was excelling and it was exceeding both of our expectations. You can see here, in comparison to that block from October, starting out at 264 pounds, He's taking 297 for a pause single to start this block, and then this is the block where he hit 330 to end everything. So because of the rapid success on that primary day, I kept the protocol identical for a long time, and it's still pretty similar now. But the way I did decide to actually ease into comp squatting was giving him a 1-1 variation on his ascending triples. So basically here, he's taking the first rep for a pause single, and then the other 2 reps after are comp singles. So he's still warming up paused, warming up to a pause set, but the catch is that on these ascending triples, the 2 reps after that pause single to start the set are not paused. And that was the only comp squatting I had him do until 3 blocks after the meet of doing entirely 2 times a week pause squats. Now that block I just showed you was from November 27th. That was the start date. And like I said, late December was when we ended that on a 330 pound pause single. So if I click something around January, for example, and we zoom out a little bit, you can see where our programming took us here. So here, like I said, I did 1-1 pause squats on his secondary day, and then I am still slowly and gradually adding in some exposure to competition squats. So 2 blocks after the block where he pause squatted 330, we are at the point where taking the first back down set of 4 is now a 1-1 pause squat, and he's doing comp squats for the percentage-based 2x4 afterwards. And I didn't want to change that pause single. It was still going super well. You can see here, now he's taking a week 1 pause single with 319 pounds, which is at the time 5 kilos under his training PR with that 330 pound paused single from late December. And here he still has 1-1 pause squats. The only difference is that they're not 3s, they're 2s. At this point, I was able to make the conclusion that Colin doesn't need high volume squatting. He just needs regular exposure to higher intensities, higher percent 1 rep max, and he needs to be doing that multiple times a week. And that's the conclusion that we made. So instead of just doing 3 sets, I evened out the volume overall, 1 less rep on this day, just adding another set. You could even consider the first, or maybe even the first and the second sets, just warm up sets leading up to that final ascending set. And in comparison to January, 2 blocks later, this is from March 19th of this year. So this is the second most recent block that we're doing. He just started a block last week, and now he is in a much different spot in comparison to immediately after he competed. So if we look at where he was right after he competed, doing completely paused squats versus that January 22nd block, where this 1x4 was a 1-1 paused set. So first rep paused, the rest comp. So this protocol is identical, still doing a 4x2 ascending 1-1 paused. And then we can look up here, almost entirely comp squats on this day, but still having that pause single in because it's going super, super well. And this is the block where he actually hit that all-time PR with 352 pounds. Between that 330 and now, he's basically just been chipping at 2.5 to 5 kilos every block. So we hit an all-time PR of 330, and then we hit an all-time PR of 341, which moved at the same RPE. And then you can see here the week 4 of this block. I even wrote like 341 again is probably a safe bet. 347 pounds is probably a reach, and he felt super good on the day and took his pause single with 352 pounds, and that marked at this point 17.5 kilos on the training PR squat with a pause in between right after the meet and now. Now Colin signed up for this meet in August 1 or 2 months ago. And now that it's April and we're still pretty far out from the meet, but I don't want him to, like I said, be only doing 2 times a week pause squats. And I still want to have that very, very gradual progression to comp squats. So this is the current block that we're running right now. We have a competition squat single with pause warm-up, so we're not actually losing the adaptations that we've gained from doing all these pause squats over time. I really, really want to proceed with caution with this strategy, basically. And you can see here, it's incredible. We're taking 325 pounds for a single, which is something at 6.5, according to him, which was incredibly easy in my eyes. But like I said, if you look at that reference video from 1 week out of his meet with 314 pounds, I can even show you comparison, but it's incredible. Now, on the left is his week 1 single of this block. So this was, I think, 8 days ago. But this is with 325 pounds in comparison to the 314 pound single that he basically almost failed from September. So I'll play it again. And Colin, if you're watching this, I'm sorry for playing this this video so many times, but we can see this single here. This was before all of the adjustments to his squat programming. Obvious faults in his center of mass management. And then right here, this was his week 1 single with 5 kilos more. And this is our first time actually not doing a pause single on his primary day. And it moved beautifully. You can see, making sure we're doing pause warm-ups all the way through the workout, and then just not pausing his top single has been absolutely key the past 2 weeks. Now, I probably could have taken a few different approaches into actually easing into comp squats on this primary day Monday single that he does, such as just telling him to do a slight pause on it, or just thinking about doing a pause squat without the pause. But that was something I actually tried with him before his meet, was to just tell him to do a pause squat without the pause, and it didn't really click in his head. Colin isn't very receptive to cues. He is much more receptive to movement constraints. So actually hammering in these pause squats it's been beautiful. It's been a beautiful process, and like I said, this single, first time actually not pausing his primary day single, and it's clear that all of the adaptations we've made from doing 2 times a week pause squats, doing the 1-1 squats, first rep pause, stripping a set of pause squats, adding in the comp squats and replacement between October and now has been magnificent. And you can also see here from yesterday, I'm recording this on Tuesday, April 25th. Yesterday, he took 330 pounds for his single afterwards. And something that's also super beautiful about this is that specifically Colin, and specifically on squat, there has been 2 or 3 instances where he's gassed out super quickly. If you look at his training history, whenever he starts a week 1 at too high of a baseline, it bites him in the ass way too quickly. He'll take his week 1 single with something too heavy that he probably shouldn't have, and then for the rest of the block, he's way too gassed and can't even take anything more on the bar compared to his week 1 single. So the strategy that we've taken as a result is to make sure that week 1 single does not go above an RP 6. 6.5 is a very slight deviation, so it hasn't been too big of an issue, but just basically making sure we're doing proper pacing has been key. And what makes it so beautiful, like I said, is that the fact that 325 is a nice and conservative start to his block is absolutely incredible, because we used to be taking, not too long ago, we used to be taking that pause single, which is now a comp single, but we used to be taking that pause single with regular sub 300 pound singles. So to kind of wrap up this case study, Colin, like I said, is competing in August. The plan that I have, at least for the foreseeable future, which I'll be taking very slowly and gradually, is to turn this day into all comp squatting and make sure we're not losing all of the benefits that we were to gain from pause squats. So right now, the only pause squatting we're doing on this day is with warm-ups, and eventually between now and August, that won't be the case. However, I don't want to be stripping pause squats out of his program entirely. I have multiple other clients who actually pretty much can pause squat their comp squat, and that's been the case for Colin. But with those other people as well, every time I ease too far away from pause squats, their squat starts going a little bit to shit. And I'm like, okay, you know what? I think you are just the type of person where we need pause squats in the program. For example, Ethan or Walter, if either one of you are watching this, both of you can expect pause squats in your program pretty damn consistently, because you guys are similar to Colin in terms of you are able to basically pause squat your comp squat and do the same amount of reps on your pause squats compared to your comp squat. So going forward, between now and the meet, I'm probably not going to be changing his secondary at all. And then the only priority I have with his primary, because of the regular low volume and exposure to high intensity that I have him doing on both days, this probably won't be changing much, at least if things go as well as they have been. The only thing that I want to change is actually starting to warm up with comp squatting. And if we look at this video one more time before I end things, the fact that Colin, like I said, peaks and tapers insanely well on squat and deadlift just by running pretty standard taper protocol, which I found worked for him in September. Just running that is probably going to add around 5 keys, maybe more, to his squat, in August compared to what we hit in training. So with that ounce of predictability, the fact that he's squatting 352 in April and he competes in August, 10 kilos more than this is probably not unlikely. And comparing where he is now to where he was, like I said, this single on the right or on the left, my bad, which was at 314 pounds, was 10 kilos less than what he squatted on meet day, just by a relatively standard taper protocol. So yeah, obviously things are percentage based in terms of how much you're progressing, but I'm expecting a huge squat and a huge BPR for Colin on meet day. If we are able to keep up the momentum transitioning from all the pause squats to the comp squats, and just kind of load the bar successfully between now and his meet. So obviously I didn't have the opportunity to run through his deadlift training in detail, so that's probably just going to be something I do in another video. And to be fair, it is a little bit more of a work in progress than his squat training is and was. So I'm looking forward to making that at some point, probably this summer or this year. But I'm super happy where both of us have come in terms of his squat training. That being the amount of data and knowledge that I've collected on who Colin is as a lifter and what he responds well to on squat, and the amount of actual numerical improvement that he's made on his squat between October and now. So other than that, that's all I have for the case study. Just a pretty in-depth explanation of a fairly simple concept of just being better at squat by doing pause squats, and then transitioning into comp squatting very, very gradually and very slowly. And another thing I probably should have talked about a little bit was just the fact that we are taking slightly longer of an off season in comparison to when he competed last and when we competed in September. So him understanding that has been key into actually allowing me to very, very gradually progress his squat using the protocol that I just explained. So other than that, thanks everyone for watching as usual. If you don't follow me on Instagram already, I'll probably be putting announcements on my story or something for future case studies. And like I said, Colin's deadlift training is definitely going to be covered sometime in the near future. But between now and then, that is all I have for this video. And again, thank you guys all for watching.